Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live Ant-Man Spoilercast. I'm Captain Logan, and joining me tonight is an exciting, eclectic assortment of co-hosts. We begin with the magnanimous Dan Torrey.
That's me.
The real Manos. I usually say beware the Steve Baxi, but I guess I should have said beware the Manos, because
No one's going to top that now.
No, really.
Beware the Steve Baxi.
What have I got, really? I can't beat Manos.
And introducing for the first time on one of these, and on a live show, it's the Curious Lo.
Whoa, I'm here. Where am I?
Lo, thanks for joining us, and I also want to announce that this is also how we're introducing Lo tonight with this live show, and this is kind of an impromptu thing. Lo and I have been talking about doing this for a while. Curious Lo is also going to start joining us frequently on Primetime Crisis, so look forward to that. Maybe not every week, because she said some nights she just can't make it, but
some nights I'm just on the chat from my work.
Yeah, you should do this from your work, and they're like, what are you doing? It's important!
Yeah. I'll still take phone calls. It'll be great. Nobody will even notice.
Anyway, so thanks for joining us, Lo, and tonight we're talking Ant-Man, full-blown spoilers, so if you haven't seen Ant-Man yet, go out and watch it and come back, and hopefully we won't still be talking, and then you can watch it. You can watch this after the fact. But anyway, so this is, of course, as always, our full-blown spoiler chat. We're going to talk about all kinds of things that happen in the movie and really kind of pick it apart and dissect it. Folks that don't like it when we nitpick, just be warned, we go really nitty-gritty with these. We like to talk about every little morsel that comes up. We're going to try to keep this to an hour tonight. So it's 9:30 here right now. We're going to end off about 10:30. And where I'm at, and where I want to start tonight. Oh, and so let me mention, if this is the first time you've ever watched one of these and you're watching live, first of all, welcome, hi there. We have a blue chat in the description, and you can click on that, and that will take you to where all the other folks that are chatting are, and you can talk to them, and you can talk to us, and we will be periodically answering questions and mentioning comments and letting you help us direct the conversation during the show. I want to start tonight with Curious Lo, because Lo is a big movie buff, but not a big comic book fan, and so I think it would be cool to start with her perspective, and also you've heard me and Dan talk about this already, so we're going to start with Lo. She's going to tell us kind of her overview opinion. Lo, as I often like to do, give me like a best thing, worst thing, and then I'm going to go to Dan, or not Dan, then I'm going to go to Manos, and then I'm going to go to Steve, and I'm going to let Steve explain why those of us that kind of like this movie are completely wrong and off base. So we're going to begin with the Curious Lo, and Lo, go ahead. Just a couple minutes. Give us an overview. Best thing, worst thing.
I would like to start out by saying that I know next to nothing about Ant-Man before going into this movie. As far as Marvel goes, I very recently started reading comics, so I don't have any history to this character. So just going into that, I actually kind of like this movie. I have a feeling that I'm wrong. But I quite enjoyed it. It wasn't the best Marvel movie by any means. In fact, I kept hearing like people say like, "Oh, this is the best Marvel movie to date," like before it came out, and I don't know where that opinion came from. But it was fun and it was different because there had been so much like just like every single movie was about the world ending, and every single movie was just like the world and then the universe, and then how can you get bigger than that just to bring it back to a smaller scale. Was nice, I think, to see that. So yeah, overall I liked it. I think best thing would definitely be Paul Rudd. I mean, I like him. I think he's very funny, and I think he did a good job. I have nothing to compare it to with the comics because I don't know what that character is really like, but I liked him. Worst thing, I would say just that the villain was kind of like a non-issue. I feel like he was very in the background a lot of the time and not a like character. He was just kind of there like doing things. So that was definitely the worst thing, is that like the plot itself was a little, I don't know, it didn't grab me. I was more in it for like the humor and the characters themselves than I was in it for more where the plot was going. But other than that, I quite enjoyed it, and I really like the Falcon, so that was cool too.
Never thought that I would see the day where I saw Falcon already in 3 movies before other major characters have even popped up yet. All right, well, that's a great place to start, Lo. Let's go right now and hang on every word of the real Manos.
Why, thank you. I enjoyed this film pretty much, actually. I did have some minor script issues with it. I think some of the details of the plot and the way the story is structured and written are very formulaic, and also I agree also with Lo about the villain. The villain he exists, and he's the reason the movie is kind of like going on. As a character himself, there's really not much to him. He's a generic evil CEO character, and it doesn't help that he looks exactly like Luthor. So, I had wondered if he is a Ant-Man villain named Egghead. Ant-Man has a villain named Egghead, by the way. And I don't know Egghead's real name, so I don't know if that was the character. But it really didn't stand out to me. But, however, I did enjoy the film overall, mostly because I thought the characters were really grounded, and I could really latch onto them. I love Paul Rudd in this film. I think the movie hangs on him, and that's why it stands up so well. Because we're able to get behind him, and we find him very likable, and we're able to kind of believe him get into this situation. The other performances I think are really good. Everybody takes the material seriously, and not as seriously. I think the approach is really good. I think Douglas and Lily take this rock solid serious, and Paul Rudd is kind of just catching up, like, okay, this is weird. You have to understand, this is strange to me. I think it's kind of funny. I think that approach really works. And I agree. I think the fact that this isn't a world-ending problem, it's a potential problem for the world, but I think the villains, what Cross is planning to do is, potentially scary. Selling this weapon to Hydra and other evil forces around the world. I mean, it would be a dangerous weapon. And it actually does kind of make the whole Ant-Man technology go from laughable to kind of threatening and dangerous. So I think it does a good job with that. And I also really love the fact, I think this was Edgar Wright's idea, if I'm not mistaken, to make a heist film, which I thought was probably one of the smartest moves in the whole movie, actually. Because that automatically separates it from, not just comic book films in general, but, the Marvel Cinematic movies as well.
All right, thanks, Manos. And now it's time to go to Baxi's dissertation on why no one should watch this movie. Go ahead, Steve.
All right, let me just get comfortable.
Yeah, if people didn't already know, I really didn't like this. I thought this was it's not a bad movie, okay? It's not a bad film. It's when I reviewed it, I said that finally we got The Incredible Hulk 2. And what I mean by that is The Incredible Hulk is a movie that's good for the most generic reasons. It doesn't have a lot of plot holes. The acting is good, and everything is just serviceable. That's what Ant-Man is to me. Everything is just serviceable, but it breaks down a lot in more areas than The Incredible Hulk does. The biggest thing for me, I guess I'll start with the positive. The biggest thing for me that I really enjoyed and latched onto is Michael Douglas is fantastic. He is the best part of this film. He's great in every scene, and he's clearly adding more through the acting than he is through the script. Because you get all these moments where he bursts out in anger, then you see in his face that there's regret. But the movie is so unbalanced that it just shifts from those scenes very randomly. And you give us like this big character moment, then you throw in a joke, and then you throw in a montage, then you throw in a character moment, then you throw in a joke, and it just it doesn't have a very good flow to it, I don't think. And that's the biggest thing about the film that I don't like, is that it doesn't have a sense of balance. The big thing that stands out to me is when we get that scene where Michael Douglas is telling Hope how her mother died. And it's a really good scene. It's a really... What was that? Ow.
Manos has to answer the phone.
Ow.
What's that noise?
It's the last sound I'll ever hear. That's what it was.
But yeah, it's a really good scene. It's a really good character moment. And then Paul Rudd, Scott Lang, breaks up and says, "This is great." And and the joke's fine. People can find it funny. My issue is Scott Lang's not really a character. Scott Lang is sarcastic, and he loves his daughter. That's his whole defining moment through the whole film. There's no real peril for him. There's no real thing for him to prove. The movie keeps trying to tell you that he's bad with commitment, and he's trying to prove he's a hero for his daughter. But he doesn't need to. He already did from the reason he was in jail. Nothing should really bother him, and the movie's pretending like it does. So instead of making a joke out of that moment with Hank Pym and Hope, he should be thinking about his daughter and actually giving his character dimension as opposed to just being really quippy. But yeah, I don't know. I really did like this film, and I guess we'll talk more about that stuff as we go on.
Okay, well, before we go to Dan, the first thing I want to say is that Dan Torrey somewhat ruined this movie for me because we did a How We're Feeling last week, and I was having so much fun with the ride and was appreciating just how laid back and relaxing and just fun it was to watch this movie, that a lot of the character stuff that Dan was bringing up, I hadn't had a chance to really suss out yet. And I have a tendency to let a movie wash over me, and then about 24 hours later, I'll start to go, oh, well, no, wait a minute, that didn't make any sense at all. But a lot of the time, it's not until then. I'm like the last person on earth that should be doing reviews 2 hours after I see a movie, because a lot of the time, the very next day, I'm like, no, wait, especially if I start writing about a thing, then I'm like, hell, hold on, my opinion is not my opinion. So Dan and I were talking about it, and everything Dan was talking about as far as character motivations not being nearly fleshed out enough, he's spot on about, especially with, and I'm still very confused about some Scott Lang stuff. We'll talk about that, because I think part of the problem that Steve was just talking about is just a lack of communication from the film about what exactly his motivations are when he's stealing stuff in the first place. That is somewhat problematic. But also, the big thing, of course, is the lack of an impetus for why Hank Pym is as angry and jaded as he is, and I think they're trying to make it all about Janet, and that he really needs an Ultron. Taking Ultron away from him and giving it to Iron Man, which is really interesting for the setup of Civil War and for all the stuff we did with that with Age of Ultron, is great. And it's partly awkward just because the very next thing we did was Ant-Man right after Ultron. And he's so worried about his weapon being, or the Pym particle being weaponized, conveniently just after, or not, maybe not conveniently, just after Janet's death. Saw it again today and had not noticed this timestamp before. He mentions that happened in 1987, which means the moment that he starts telling S.H.I.E.L.D. not to weaponize it is just after that happened. And I don't think that that's a coincidence. That does not replace Ultron for me. Ant-Man is about a legacy of screw-ups, and he is not enough of one. That's part of the big problem. Dan, I'd love to hear you follow up what I just said, and then give your general opinions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the fact that it's different than the comics necessarily makes it a poor choice.
That's not what I'm saying, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. But I think that's more interesting potentially. I mean, I just think there's not enough in the movie for me to understand why these people are doing what they're doing. So, like, the whole thing with the movie is these characters that have been distanced from their daughters are trying to reconcile relationships with them because of past mistakes they've made. But I don't understand what motivated them to make those mistakes in the first place. Like, we see Scott Lang, he's like all anti-establishment and stuff initially. He doesn't really have that part of his character after because he's so concerned about his daughter. What made him give up this relationship that was so important to him in the first place? What motivated him enough to steal this kind of stuff and then sever that relationship? There had to have been some really important thing going on other than, they say vaguely that people's money was being stolen, but I don't know, like, what kind of guy that, like, why that would bother him, or it's just not fleshed out enough, I don't think. And that was really my issue, was we don't know enough about the characters and what led them to the point that they're in the movie to my satisfaction. I liked the movie a lot. I thought it was a fun ride, like everyone else has been saying. I like all the performances in the movie. I just wish, like, I I just felt that the more interesting stories with the two dual protagonists we have in this movie aren't in the movie. Hank Pym's interesting story is him in the Cold War being with S.H.I.E.L.D. and worrying about the Pym particle being weaponized and losing his wife and all of that stuff, and the relationship with his daughter being severed because of that. That's an interesting story for that character. And I think Scott Lang's interesting story is him wrestling with the fact that is his daughter's relationship more important to him than the greater good. That's an interesting story. What's in this movie, it's kind of a typical story, and I don't think it's executed as well as it could have been. I like a lot of the actors in the movie. I think Corey Stoll, he's a great actor. I know him from House of Cards, and I thought he was really wasted here. Again, I don't know enough about the background between those two characters, Pym and Stoll's character, to care about their relationship as potential mentors. Like, they just say that they had this like father-son dynamic, but we're not really shown that at all. It's just mentioned offhandedly, and it's supposed to be this big conflict between the two characters. Like, Hank Pym says to him, "I saw too much of myself in you." Well, all we know about this guy is he's a crazy maniac that's his brain's been altered by the Pym particles, so we don't know what's him, what's the stuff Hank Pym's seen in him. I just have no idea. So some of the lines in the movie just don't resonate because we don't know enough about the people in the movie. So I don't know. Maybe that's an issue of stuff being cut out. I don't know. But I just wasn't on board with some of the stuff the movie was trying to do. I think some of the ideas were good, but they just weren't executed as well as I would have liked. That's really my big issue with it. Otherwise, I thought it was a really enjoyable movie. I didn't think it was bad. It wasn't the kind of thing where I was watching it being like, I don't like this. I liked the movie. There was just some issues I had with it on the script and execution level in that regard, I suppose.
Yeah, Dan, the big reason I said that I think you need to replace Ultron with something is because he's acting as if making the Pym particle was this huge, giant mistake. And it was in that he lost Janet, but he also says she died a hero, and you needed the Pym particle for them to stop a nuclear warhead. So
yeah, they used it as a weapon to stop a nuclear warhead. I don't know why that would immediately make him think, oh, we can't weaponize this, because a weapon can be used for good. It just depends on whose hands the weapon is in, right?
And when he says to Yellow Jacket that he saw too much of himself in it, the only thing I could figure is that it's supposed to be that when he was younger, he was really brash and he was like overly he was arrogant and conceited and had these huge aspirations and didn't think about the potential consequences, but the only consequence there was the death of his wife, which I could see him holding himself responsible for that. I could see that, and I could see him like quitting over it. But I don't feel like the movie is explicit enough if that's what it's supposed to be. If it's supposed to be just, my wife died, so I don't want anyone to use the particle, as if he hadn't thought about the whole like subatomic world before, and that like that's now a defect of it or something. Because again, she had to go into that for it to happen. So I don't know, but I'm just saying it's not explicit enough about that, in exactly the same way it's not explicit enough about whether Scott Lang was a social crusader and that's why he sold stuff, or what I saw it as until suddenly Yellow Jacket has a speech to him about it, as just he used that as an excuse to steal from rich people as opposed to anyone else, where he's still selfish and he's still doing it for himself, but he feels like it's easier to get away with stealing stuff from rich people that aren't going to feel it as hard, and he doesn't want to hurt people because he's anti-violence. But then all of a sudden, when Yellow Jacket starts speechifying about it, it sounds like he's supposed to be more of a social crusader, which I never saw. And so I don't know. There's a lot of just the movie not being clear enough about stuff. And I can't believe I'm going to say this, because I'm usually resisting this kind of thing. I think we needed flashbacks. I really do. And I can't believe I'm saying that. But I think we needed to see at least Hank Pym and the Yellow Jacket guy talking, years ago when they were together.
The problems with this movie could very easily be resolved with Ant-Man stuff in some sort of prequel something, whether it be Agent Carter or if we do a Hank Pym prequel TV series on Netflix or whatever. Who knows? But
I think that I don't know. See, the thing is, when a film is vague about such things, like the relationship between Pym and Cross, it makes you have to kind of speculate. And I don't always like doing that. I like the film. Well, no, I shouldn't say that, because it is fun to speculate. But why am I speculating? Is it because they intentionally left questions for us, or did they just kind of get sloppy and leave us to fill in the blanks? And I feel it's probably the latter in this case. Because when I wonder about the relationship between Pym and Cross, and how he saw himself in that character, and that's what scared him and kind of broke off their relationship. I wonder, because like where we see Cross going, like he doesn't care who gets this material. He doesn't care who gets this technology and what they use it for. They can, the fact that whole armies could use this kind of weaponry is kind of a scary concept. And it does make me wonder, like, maybe did he have this feeling that maybe he was kind of going to go in that direction if Janet hadn't died, and changed his whole viewpoint of that. That was like a huge wake-up call when she disappears. So maybe that was like the thing that kind of broke him from this possible train of thought.
See, I thought of that sort of thing too, but the thing with Cross that bugs me is we're not sure about what kind of person he was before the movie starts, because they say he's a maniac because his brain's been screwed up by the Pym particles and him using them too much.
So I'm confused by that. The whole let me say this real fast. I'm sorry. When he says you're deranged because the particle. That came out of nowhere. I mean, like, he just finally got it so that you can shrink people. How could he possibly be affected by it? Like when has he been? What has he been using it for? How's it been making physical contact? I don't understand any of that, Dan. Mm-hmm. Like I'm wondering if it's that moment that he's gone too far and he's gonna kill her, and that's crazy that he go that far. But that before that we still are seeing the real him. Boy, I don't know, Dan. I have no idea.
I mean, maybe it's just a matter of the performance, too, because he acted like just as much of a maniac in the scene he was introduced. I mean, he murdered someone in a bathroom.
That's right. Yeah. Was it the effect of the particle that he did that, or
we just don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Honestly, just leave that out. Why does he need to be... Why do we need a you're not yourself mind thing with this character? That doesn't make any... Like, all you have to do is make... is give us a sense that Hank Pym might have gone too far, like Manos was saying. And then have this guy go too far and let him turn into... I mean, like, it's not like... Everybody keeps comparing it to Obadiah Stane. It's not like Stane needed a my mind is messed up kind of plot for him to go as far as he did.
I'm glad you brought up Stane, because I think one of my biggest issues with Corey Stoll's Darren Cross is that he's basically the stupid version of Aldrich Killian from Iron Man 3. Aldrich Killian had pretty much the same kind of setup, but his plan was so much smarter. It was actually about things. It had ideas. It gave him an interesting motivation and relationship to the hero, and he has the same idea of creating like a state of perpetual war by selling to both sides and such. And all Darren Cross is all the stuff that Aldrich Killian was, without any of the interesting motivation or character parallels to make it work.
I wish... Oh, I'm sorry. What I think I wish they had done is take full advantage of the fact that they made Cross Yellow Jacket a flip side of Ant-Man, a flip side of Pym. Because a lot of the worst things Pym did in the comics was when he was wearing the Yellow Jacket costume. So, go all the way with it. And I think all they do in the film is they suggest that concept. Where, he's a younger version of Pym who goes in a different direction, and it scares him. And it would have been nice if they had done that.
And he doesn't have a lot of parallels or interesting contrasts with Scott Lang himself, really. I mean, like, they start fighting really hard at the end, and it's like, just because they're both the guys with the suits. His stuff about, like, you're nothing, and like I'm offended by your existence, I thought it was actually kind of amusing. But there's not any really interesting things to look at there between those two, and so I find myself and I like Scott Lang in places, but I find myself at the end almost wishing we could have had some kind of a showdown with him and Hank Pym instead, because first of all, they're actually each other's antagonists, and secondly, because then if they talk some more, maybe I would understand more about their relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's potentially interesting parallels with those characters that I thought of while I was watching the movie. Like, both of them are characters that rebelled against some powerful entity because they felt like their ethics were being compromised. They felt like they were being forced in a situation where something that they were responsible for was being used for the wrong reasons and hurting people. And Hank Pym left and started this gigantic company. Society rewarded his rebellion, and Scott Lang was condemned for his. And I think that's a potentially interesting parallel between the two characters and differences between them, but there's nothing done with it at all.
Yeah, Dan, there's lots of stuff between Scott Lang and Hank Pym. I'm just saying there's not really anything between Scott Lang and Cross.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. I misunderstood you. I thought you were talking about Hank Pym.
No, that's okay. The point I was making is they get this giant, awesome 15-minute showdown at the end. They're not really each other's, big antagonists. That's not who I want to see fighting right now.
Right, yeah.
It all just kind of screams of, because a lot of people are saying this is a throwback to the way superhero films used to be, that it's simple on purpose, but it has all the same problems as stuff like Spider-Man 1 and Blade Trinity and Green Lantern and Daredevil, the theatrical cut.
Nearly as bad as half those movies.
It's not as bad. Again, it's not a bad movie. It's just it's got the exact same sort of shortcomings.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't have a problem with Lang and Cross really, going at odds at each other, because Lang is doing this all for his daughter. Frankly, he's the obstacle. He has grown to really have affection for the Pyms. So to me, that made sense. And of course, fighting Scott, killing Scott is in a way by proxy getting back at Pym. So I don't know. I didn't have any issues with that.
I thought the idea, and I picked up on this time in a way I didn't the first time I saw it. This idea that perhaps the big reason that Pym decided to go after Lang in the first place was because he was looking for somebody that was really good at stealing stuff, and then then had this kind of kindred thing with him and his daughter, where he saw a guy that was losing his family and decided that they had too much in common, and that he wanted to help him at the same time as use him to help him out. But that's not broad enough to the fore. It seems like he's more just using that as a motivation to try to get Pym to help him. And then my biggest problem with the entire movie is just how convoluted, the incredibly convoluted way that he gets Scott Lang to help him out in the first place when he could have just walked up to him. They're on because the problem is they're on a time crunch. Like Hope mentions that later, where she's like, she has that line where she says, "I didn't like this idea when we had weeks. Now we only have days." They're on a time crunch. Why is he sitting around hoping the guy will rob him? And you can make the case maybe it's just because he needs to test him, but he's already seen what he can do. What more is there to test? I don't know what that's about, and I think it's because in the comics, Scott Lang steals the Ant-Man suit, and then Pym comes to him. And if he found out about the suit and gone after it, and this is not me saying it's got to be just like the comics, but I feel like the comic origin is better and smarter for the film they made, and I don't know why they changed it and why they didn't just go with that.
I'm not sure.
And there's a couple of places where it does stuff like that, like the whole shrinking thing. They actually go out of their way to invent a new explanation for the shrinking, and it's less scientific than the way the comics do it, where they say the molecules go closer together, but that would change how heavy a person is. And in the comics, it's actually that when Scott Lang becomes Ant-Man, Hank Pym starts studying the dimension that all of their excess matter goes into. And that could have basically been the quantum realm. There was no reason that they had to alter all that and make it make less sense.
Yeah, I'm going to start looking at some comments, and then I want Lo to break in and interrupt this and start saying things.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but my internet shut down for a minute, so I was gone for a little bit and then came back. But
Is your connection stable now, or are we good?
Yeah, no, we're good.
Excellent.
I noticed that picture a lot.
Let's mention some things we liked too.
Yes. Yes, of course, absolutely.
Well, yeah, we're just discussing the issues right now.
I wanted to go to a couple comments here and there just so that the folks live know that we're paying attention to them. Rocket says the scene between Hope and Scott in the car when Scott says he's in the suit is because he's expendable and Hope is not that to Hank. Yeah, and that was the thing that made me okay with the fact that now finally he's bringing up to her what exactly happened with Janet. I just feel like we still need some more. My big thing is just I don't know why he didn't just go up to him and say, "Hey, I need your help with the problem, and it might help your problem."
Because you needed a cool action sequence at the beginning of the movie. Come on.
Discovered the something like they could have come up with some way that he found out about this Ant-Man suit and went and tried to steal it. Especially because they had this whole urban legend thing where people had heard of it, but it wasn't. But people didn't know if it was real or not, which I thought was really kind of funny. This idea that people had heard of Ant-Man, but it was too preposterous to be believed, so people just didn't buy into it. This idea of Ant-Man being kind of the second superhero, we don't know about other things that could be,
Yeah.
But this idea of like you get Captain America, and then later you've got this secret superhero that nobody knew about, and so this can be a legacy hero. I love that. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and he and Wasp were working together like years before
when
Iron Man shows up.
When they do the flashback and they show him and Wasp, I don't know why, I almost welled up a little bit. I was pretty excited about that. That was cool.
That was a fantastic scene. I have to say I was rather disappointed that Janet isn't in, because I always liked her better than Hank, frankly. And just seeing her. Actually, I didn't think we'd see her in action. I thought she'd only be mentioned. So it was actually thrilling and nice, and also to see that whole sequence play out. I thought that was really exciting. I noticed that we never saw her face ever. There's even a picture of her with a hat, like covering her face, Carmen Sandiego style.
We haven't cast her yet. Don't look.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and there's a lot of talk that they probably will eventually cast her. I'm surprised by this. I kind of thought this was just and one of the other things, real quick, of course, that I love about this is that it's straight up a B-level superhero movie. They're not even trying to legitimize this as A-list. They're like, look, Marvel, we got the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's like comic books now. It's big and grandiose. We can do any kind of story we want to, and here's just a B-level superhero movie. It's not like Guardians, where we try to make them into A-list heroes. This guy is a goofy B-list character, and they go full tilt with that. I love that. But so I didn't expect this would be a setup for a guy, so we knew his backstory, so that we could just get him in Avengers, and we wouldn't have to explain all that stuff there. And there's talk of a potential sequel still. And apparently, I was looking this up earlier. Apparently, Michael Douglas really wants Catherine Zeta-Jones to play her.
Oh, that'd be cool.
That'd be
interesting.
And I think that's cool. And then Evangeline Lilly is asking for Michelle Pfeiffer, and I think that would be okay.
Who would you guys cast?
I don't know, I'm not real big into casting, but I thought it was neat that that the actors are throwing stuff out. I think that's awesome.
Isn't Catherine Zeta-Jones married to Michael Douglas? Like, if those two were cast as Hank Pym and Janet together, that could be a really interesting chemistry to get on screen.
It would also be someone similar in character type, because Lily playing Hope Van Dyne is a different character. And even if she becomes Wasp, she's a different character than Janet. She's a more hardened character. She's a little bit more stoic and heroic, where Janet was kind of a playboy socialite kind of character. The kind of parts Audrey Hepburn would play, frankly. And I'd be curious to see who they get. Catherine Zeta-Jones actually would be an interesting choice. I hadn't thought of that. And let's see, just someone who would be a little more fun, frankly. Because Hope is going to be a more serious Wasp. So if they do pull her out of this dimension, if that does actually happen, I'm guessing she would probably, I think, frozen in time, suspended in animation, like Steve Rogers was.
I mean, I could see, if it's like you keep shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and time has no meaning, she's probably self-aware the whole time.
Oh, man, yeah.
I mean, it would be terrible. Like, probably what they would do is pull her out, and then, she'd have to, like, could like catch up and get get acclimated to reality again and stuff.
Well, wasn't there something, and I've only seen the movie once, but like at the end where he didn't remember what happened when he was subatomic.
You are correct, yes.
Yeah, that's right.
So like she might just not remember any of it, and almost just like Captain America.
That'd be interesting because the Ultimates. That'd be interesting because in the Ultimates, Wasp and Captain America do get together, and they do have sort of the out of their world, out of their depth kind of relatability. So it'd be interesting if they come back and she's got no memories, and she immediately latches on to Steve Rogers because of it.
And that would be the way to bring her back without her being insane. Because
Janet classically always has a crush on the Thor too. I hope that's in the movie someday.
Oh, that'd be hilarious.
And you know what? I was just thinking about this not that long ago. Janet actually did have that kind of thing happen to her. At the end of Secret Invasion, she supposedly dies, but instead she shrunk down to the microverse instead, where the Avengers ended up going down and actually rescuing her, where she was in the middle of a whole crazy adventure that they joined in on. So, yeah, I mean, that oddly parallels what happened to her in the comics.
Let's talk about some of the fun nitty-gritty stuff, and let's begin there. We got a half an hour left, so I want to get into some details. I thought of something this time around that I didn't think of the first time I saw it, which was, I questioned whether or not putting in the big thing into the belt would have actually done what it did. The thing I was wondering this time was he got lucky that he came back exactly the right size.
That's always the thing with shrinking. Let's just be honest. Shrinking is stupid.
That thing is supposed to...
It's a stupid science fiction thing.
No, you're right. But the thing he throws... Yeah, but the thing is, it seems like hear me out, because you're not wrong. Okay. But when you throw those little discs, it seems like it tends to make things a certain proportion size bigger than they were before. And but he is perpetually shrinking. He's still shrinking when that happens. So the fact that he actually comes back out the right size, I found myself I thought it would be a great joke for him later on to be like, I think I'm 3 inches taller than I was before, or something.
I actually took it as the little weapon, the growing weapon, actually sort of recharged his equipment. He was trying desperately to regrow himself, and it sort of sparked an extra charge. That's the way I took it. So it kind of kicked in the rest of the system.
Yeah, because it wasn't like he just put it anywhere on his body and then he grew. He stuck it into his belt where his growing mechanism was, so that it would kind of recharge that, like you were saying. Yeah,
but the sense I got from it was who knows? It was it goes in there and it makes that thing grow and that lets it. I have no idea. I don't know how that super science works. I don't think there is any knowing that.
You have to take into consideration too that when they were trying to shrink baby lambs, it wasn't working very well. But then suddenly he throws one of the growing things at a ant and it comes out just fine, really big.
William Parcell says, hasn't Feige confirmed that Hope will be Wasp going forward except in flashbacks? Yeah, but I could see bringing her back out and then having her do things behind the scenes with Hank Pym. You know what else I just thought of? That could all be precursor to Captain America retiring later and stuff like that, where we see old superheroes in desk jobs before we give them desk jobs later, some of the ones that are currently in costume. Because there's been talk about certain people retiring but then being around behind the scenes. I just thought of that.
We'll see. Hey, let's see.
One of the things I wanted to talk about the Wasp before we moved on from that earlier. I was really glad the way that the costume looked the way it did at the end, because I was kind of disappointed when we saw Janet in the flashbacks that she was just in a winged Ant-Man costume. I really liked that the Wasp has her own distinct look in the suit that we're going to be using moving forward, so that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
Let me ask you guys, how do you think Hope was utilized in the film? And this can go up to anybody.
I didn't really like her at all. I love the actress. The actress is fantastic. She has no character. She's angry, and her whole reason for existing is to make the other characters think about and do things, but she has no personal identity to her. She's just angry about things. and that really bothered me because the Wasp is a really interesting character on her own, and even if you weren't going to use Janet, you could give her parts of Janet's personality to make her stick out. A lot of the times in old Ant-Man stuff, Janet would outshadow Ant-Man himself, the way Rhodey would outshadow Iron Man. And Hope was just kind of a catalyst for things, didn't have like her own personality to her, I don't think.
You know, the funny thing is about Janet is, I don't know how many people really know this about her origin, but she kind of has the Batman origin, where her father was killed, and that kind of really got her motivated to become a superhero.
I guess what I like about her, and again, stuff just not brought enough to the fore. I guess what I like about her is that she is running that company and then sort of kind of ends up making a similar mistake to what Hank Pym would have made if he made a mistake, and this movie was about that. You know, she trusts this cross guy and is letting him do stuff with the Pym party, and then all of a sudden, oh no, that's a bad idea. But no, you're right. I mean, there's not a whole lot to her. Let me ask you guys this: did you think that she and Scott getting together at the end was too forced and obligatory and kind of typical and what you would have expected?
Yeah.
Was it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I like the actors together. I think they have chemistry. It's just like you didn't need to have them kissing about it. You could have saved that or done something else, or give her an identity before you throw her in a relationship. Is all.
Yeah, I mean, the issue that I had with her character was the relationship that she had with her father and why it went south didn't make all that much sense to me. Like, Hank Pym's character thing is like, oh, I couldn't tell you how your mother died when you were younger to protect you. So, like, why didn't you tell her the truth before she got angry at you about it and ousted you from the company as an adult? I don't know why he had to tell her all that stuff at that moment. Like, the whole reason as to why he was ousted from his company and Cross taking over could have been prevented if he was just more honest with her earlier on in the timeline of the movie and the events that we didn't see. I was kind of fuzzy on why he didn't tell her that before. That could have been the reason why, to prevent her from wanting to put on the suit too. Be like, yeah, this is how your mother died. This is the reason why I don't want to give you the technology and why I'm being so unfair and trying to get this thief guy to put on the suit instead of you too. Can't think of a reason as to why he didn't tell her earlier than he did in the movie. So I don't really understand why those characters have a conflict in their relationship other than the script needs them to have one. It just doesn't make all that much sense to me.
You know, it might have been a little bit better if he had told her like early on, and maybe all this time maybe she would blame him for that. That might have been a little bit more of a realistic sense of tension between the two of them.
It would have been a lot harder to get her in the suit that way, though.
That's true.
How dare you work with my mother? Now I'm going to put the suit. But she can have a character arc when she gets there, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. God forbid she gets a character arc in this movie.
Yeah, right? Well, and I mean, the movie is called Ant-Man. It is Scott Lang, Hank Pym's movie, so she doesn't have to have a character arc. But Dan's right. That is all somewhat confusing and not fleshed out, and there's all kinds of explanations I could give you that are based on things that are just not really in the movie. The thing is, it's just a little bit confusing where his motivations are sometimes. Like, the sense I get is that he's supposed to be like berating himself, and he hates himself for letting Janet get killed, even though of course he calls her a hero and that needed to happen. So the sense I get, Dan, is he didn't tell her before, or at least when she was growing up and stuff, because he was trying to save her from emotional pain, and because he couldn't bring himself to, because he's just so irrationally hating himself for it. But if it's just let me ask you this, Dan, would you have bought it if it was just he hates himself so much he's irrational. He can't bring himself to tell her even when it makes sense to, but that's not really in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but then that could potentially ruin the entire reason why he had to sever his relationship with his daughter in the first place. Like, if he didn't have the Scott Lang plan in contingency, if he just let things happen and didn't tell her for that reason, then the Ant-Man technology she might have used it, and it might have been sold to people because Darren Cross took over. Like, he's not being he's just not making decisions that make sense to prevent the entire reason why he had that falling out with her in the first place.
Well, Dan, you just went off and wrote a better movie, is what you did. Because if his losing his wife made him irrational to the point where he allowed something like that to happen, that could be his Ultron. That could be the big mistake he made, was letting that get in the hands of somebody else, and then getting sold to Hydra or whatever. Like, we could have had the big horrible thing he did in this movie, but he didn't really. We don't really have that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I like the characters and where they're trying to go with them. I just don't understand where all that's at, based on what's actually in the movie. I mean, I think the actors are a large part as to why I like the people in the movie so much. I mean, I can't state enough how much I like the performances, and I think the humor that's in the movie. Paul Rudd brings a lot to this, because I think a lot of people were getting I don't count myself among these people, but I think a lot of people were getting tired of Marvel's brand of humor, where some people were finding it intrusive and it didn't totally fit the movie. And I think Steve felt that way. He mentioned that when he was reviewing it, and when he talked about it earlier. I didn't have that experience with it. I thought the movie was really funny. I think all the jokes played for me. I liked all of the humor that was in the movie, and I think a lot of that has to do with not only Paul Rudd but also Michael Pena, because Michael Pena is he plays Scott Lang's friend and the one that gets him back into the business initially. And I think both of them are really funny, and they come from a comedic background and they sell it really well. And I think they are the best comedic part of the movie for sure. I was laughing, especially at the montages where Michael Pena is mouthing dialogue over other people. That stuff was hilarious.
I love that. It reminded me of a show on Comedy Central called Drunk History.
Yes, I was thinking the same thing.
Where the reenactors are talking just like the guy telling you the story, even though you know that's not how it played out. Yeah, I enjoyed those, and they didn't do it too much. They did it once at the beginning and once at the end, and I thought both times were very entertaining.
Well, it was super fun to get to see Falcon come back and doing that.
Seeing Stan doing it too was awesome. His cameo was great in this.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, awesome.
William Parcell asked, and I want to start getting more to the comments if we can. Did the Falcon scene feel out of nowhere for you guys? No, not at all. I thought it was great. And I didn't see it coming. I thought it was really cool. We're gonna go to this old Howard Stark facility, and then there's the Avengers training facility just set up in Age of Ultron. That was fantastic. I love Falcon. I've been wanting him to get his own movie ever since Civil War. He's turning into one of my favorite characters. Or not Civil War. I keep saying that. I keep actually saying Civil War when I mean Winter Soldier. Anyway, no, that was hilarious, and didn't expect him to be on screen as long as he was. That was great, and that was one of those fun, like, hero gets to fight a hero, but there's sort of a reason for it, and I don't know, that was fun.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he's breaking into his place. I gotta say, even more than the cameo of Stan Lee, I think was outshined by the cameo by Garrett Morris. I screamed when I saw that. That was great.
I'm sorry, this has gone over my head. What are we talking about?
Garrett Morris is one of the original Saturday Night Live performers, and he is in a moment in this film where he's in the car and Scott Lang lands on top of it.
Was that who that was?
Yeah, that was Garrett Morris, and Garrett Morris played Ant-Man. I think he's the last previous live-action Ant-Man in the Saturday Night Live sketch.
That's funny that they even thought of that. Oh my God, that's brilliant.
I was so hoping they would acknowledge that in some way, and they sure did. And
it was really funny. Like, he hits the car, and he's like, "What?" And then he gets giant. And that was really funny, or normal size. But yeah, that was pretty great. I wonder how many people besides Manos noticed that.
Anybody not 12?
I got laughed out loud when I saw that moment.
I just guess I never saw that sketch. Now I feel outnumbered.
Oh, you should see it. It's hilarious. It was an episode when Margot Kidder guest hosted. And she and Superman, played by Bill Murray, were having a dinner party, and they invited a bunch of superheroes over. And it's cool because they don't care if it's Marvel or DC. Both Marvel and DC characters show up. Where Dan Aykroyd is playing the Flash, and Belushi plays the Hulk. And it's absolutely adorable. So yeah, and this was like, this is the thing. You know, everybody talks about, oh, Aquaman was made a joke because of Super Friends. Well, Ant-Man, this is Ant-Man Super Friends. I mean, people have pretty much remembered, you know, when they think of Ant-Man who aren't comic book fans, they, you know, the only thing they know of is, it's Ant-Man. I can shrink down to the size of an ant and retain my human strength. And Flash, like, laughs at him and tells the Hulk, hey, check it out. This guy has the strength of a human.
You know, it occurs to me that we should, after you've said that, Manos, we should back off a minute and mention how kind of incredible it is that there's a movie based on Ant-Man and it didn't make $5 opening weekend. Like it's amazing the world we live in now, where we can convince people to see a movie based on this character. I think that's so cool. And I mean, like I said, I was at a theater today. I was having a hard time looking at the screen and not being distracted constantly by this elderly lady sitting next to me that was laughing constantly and having a really great time. And that's so cool. So I'm seeing articles talking about how this is Marvel's second weakest opening behind Incredible Hulk. So it's like, oh, it only made $57 million opening weekend. An Ant-Man movie made $57 million. I mean, I know Guardians just killed everything, but there's a lot of reasons that performed before this did. And I don't think anybody was expecting this to do those kinds of numbers, and I think Marvel's really happy with it. I read that it was like Paul Rudd's biggest opening ever. It was Michael Douglas's second biggest opening ever, which I'm surprised by. Michael Douglas is bigger than that. But anyway, all that I just thought was really interesting. I don't mean to keep going to William Parcell, but he makes a really great point when he says, "Why doesn't the Ant-Man suit have wings? If they could put it on Janet's suit, why doesn't his suit have wings?"
I've always wondered that. It's like, he had the technology, gave it to Janet, and he never used it for himself.
He never used any of her lasers either, and those things could come in handy as well.
Batman does get the growing, really big powers, too. So he gets a trade-off, I guess.
Well, actually, Janet eventually got those powers, too. So it's like...
Oh, okay.
It's like, geez. Oh. It's like, way to, sell yourself short, man.
Ain't that the story of him, though?
By the way, I should mention we've lost Lo again.
Yeah, we keep losing Lo.
Sorry about that. If you've been wondering, if you're just listening and not watching and you're wondering why Lo isn't talking, it's because she's having a really hard time actually being here with us. Johnny Torch, how come shrinking is, speaking to what I was saying a minute ago, how come shrinking is supposed to be a, air quote, corny concept, but a talking raccoon is okay with the general public? I mean, I think the latter would be the tougher sell. What do you guys think?
I guess with a talking raccoon, you kind of know what you're getting into right away. It's a talking raccoon that makes sarcastic remarks. It's meant to be funny. It's not meant to be taken seriously. And even if if a talking raccoon came at you with a gun, you'd be frightened. It's not the same. It's not the same thing as a guy being able to shrink, where you could necessarily take that seriously, because what kind of a threat could a tiny person give you? But I mean, of course, that's kind of an ill-informed thought, but I think a lot of people do think that, what are you going to do if you can just get smaller? Wouldn't you want to get bigger? And you have to use that power a lot more creatively, so that's why people immediately think it's a little bit more corny.
And also, think about most of the shrinking movies and TV show episodes that use that. I mean, 80% of them rip off Fantastic Voyage, where they just have to get inside someone's body and pull something out. Or it's often used as a way to imprison somebody or victimize somebody instead of being used as an advantage.
I think that the coolest thing about this movie is that it makes the case that being, shrinking down that size is really cool. And it is an advantage. I mean, I think the movie kind of tackles that perception head on. And in my mind, the way the special effects are done and the way that him being small is implemented in the story, I think that's one of the things that's most well accomplished in the movie, is making that point. And it's great.
I think the action scenes with Ant-Man going from small to big, and how he's able to just do it so quickly, and the special effects hold up scene to scene. I think it looks fantastic. I also really like how intuitive the Ant-Man costume is, because he's got the button like right there on his palm, and they make really full use of that all the way through.
Yeah. Also, yeah. You know what? The way he like shrinks and grows in fight sequences with people, it actually reminded me of Nightcrawler. Actually.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Because
like
it's almost
X2.
Yeah, because when you think about it, it is kind of like very similar. You get a guy punching you and disappearing, and punching you and disappearing.
It is true.
So that's kind of tricky to fight. I mean, I don't want to fight a guy like that.
I think that's why I love the Falcon scene so much, is that it's a guy with wings and he can't fight an ant that fights back. It's just inherently hilarious and inherently difficult to do.
It's a good cameo, too, because birds eat insects like ants.
Good point.
Like an ant, Falcon. It's awesome.
Welcome back, Lo.
Hi, hold on. Oh, thanks. Hi. You shouldn't tell them that I'm not here. They'll just think that I'm like really stoic and like a strong silent.
Oh, okay. Oh, your microphone's all fuzzy and staticky again.
Oh no.
Speaking to that question real quick, I also thought that you guys had a lot of great points. I also think it's somewhat of a genre thing, because you can sell Guardians, despite the fact we've got a raccoon and some goofy crazy stuff, you can sell Guardians on, we haven't had a really good, solid, quirky space adventure in a really long time. And, like, they didn't sell that movie as a superhero thing. But this... It's called Ant-Man. It sounds like a superhero thing, and it sounds like a knockoff of cooler-sounding, more dramatic-sounding characters. So, Marvel Studios puts out an Ant-Man movie before they can put out a Spider-Man movie, and people are like, "Oh, that sounds like a boring, generic, weird thing." Like, you can't sell Ant-Man on anything other than a superhero movie, and you can try to sell it on a heist movie, but like that doesn't sound like a big high-concept thing that a lot of families are going to go to. So you still have to sell it on being a superhero thing. You guys we should talk some more about the action. I thought one of the cleverest and most fun bits was all of the miniature exploding buildings when he's running through that miniature city. That was neat, especially because it speaks to the B-level and small-scale nature of this thing. That we keep going into these really, really small, almost subatomic kind of, not sub, but tiny locations, and the world, at least right away, is not at stake, but we keep shooting things as if it is, and then we keep pulling back and having this larger perspective, which is always hilarious. But when he's jumping up, they're not even painted buildings, and they make it look like as epic as Avengers. I think that's so cool. Like, there's a lot of effects that are just as spectacular as Avengers, and then we make it seem like a much smaller deal than it is, because then we pull back and it's just a train hitting a guy, like a little train hitting a. I love that. That whole thing was like, and then they go even farther by like making an ant giant and stuff. And I mean, like they took the concept as far as they could take it. I think that stuff was wonderful.
Hey, is my microphone better?
We can hear you, but you still sound like a robot.
I was trying so hard to hide it.
Oh, sorry. Lo didn't want anyone to know that she's actually a cyber man, cyber woman.
Quick, talk like a robot. Maybe that'll fix it.
I wouldn't even know where to begin. I always talk like a robot. That's just how I talk.
I have to agree. I love that train joke.
Yeah.
My wife and I saw that in the trailer. Laughed. That really, really cool. I, of course, didn't see any of the model sequence in any of the trailers. So that was really impressive when he was shooting across. While he was running across the model for Derek Zoolander's Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good.
What is this? A battlefield for ants?
Yeah.
Manos, I'm glad you understood that. I had no idea.
Have you ever seen Zoolander?
Yes.
Okay.
Now I know what she's talking. Okay.
There's a sequel coming out. I'm so excited. Is my microphone better now?
No, it's still so fun. I'm looking for at some more comments here. Just give me a couple of minutes. You guys feel free to bring something else up. We've only got a few minutes left.
I'll do it. I really loved seeing Cassie in this film. I'm a big fan of Scott Lang's daughter's stature, and the fact that she exists in the cinematic universe is really cool. Even though she's, I don't know, 8 or something like that. I enjoy the fact that she likes weird things, like, you know, he gave her that deformed bunny, and she loved it. So I don't know. The fact that she exists and the potential of her becoming a hero in the future, I think, is really neat.
Rocket says his favorite fight was the briefcase. I forgot to bring that up. The briefcase thing was hilarious.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Music choice was awesome for that too.
Yeah.
Also, what got a big laugh with the theaters. I mean, both times I saw it was Yellow Jacket hitting the bug zapper.
Oh yeah. That was good.
That was pretty great.
Also, Anthony dying. That was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
He doesn't like this movie, so he likes it when things get killed.
I don't know. My theater really reacted to that. They really liked the scene where he's like, Anthony!
Yeah, they played that as so dramatic with the wing and the... Yeah. No, that was great. Well, and what I kept thinking was, how in the world could you possibly keep track of a number system with a species that doesn't live very long?
He's got a lot of time.
I guess, because he's like 247 or whatever the number was, and then the explanation was there are a lot of it. Have you numbered all of them?
Yes, he's tried to.
There are a lot of ants. I've numbered them all. I also couldn't help this time I saw it, but imagining Hank Pym shrinking down to put the saddle on the back of that ant. Because he's got a saddle.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen that scene. See, that's the scene if Quentin Tarantino made that movie, we would have had a 5-minute scene about putting a saddle on an ant. and it would have been brilliant and a lot of people's favorite scene.
I guess to answer some of the comments here, we're gonna have to go back to a few topics that we've covered already. AMC Comics, I think the movie kind of acknowledged the forced romance thing at the end, given how the scenes seemed to be played for laughs. It did, but I still don't know that I entirely bought it. I mean, because we've got 2 lows, and that's...
I know, right? I was like, hey, look, it's a picture of me.
I'm just waiting for the other one to start talking and then see if one's a robot and the other one's a real person.
Is my microphone working now?
Yeah, it's better. But I want the other one to start talking and not. Come on, Robot Low. Okay. But anyway, so the what we're talking the romance.
She's here to tell us that we've been talking to the wrong Low for like 40 minutes.
She's like, I don't want you to listen to anything that Low has said about my husband.
Guys, it's not me.
But I don't know. I was making some point, and now I can't remember. Something about the idea of that being kind of a force. Oh, I know what it was. She says before they pull the whole thing off that like maybe you have a chance of maybe kind of pulling this off now, and that like I've gone from not liking you at all to almost liking you, and I think especially with that character, I'm having a hard time buying the whole you saved the day and now I love you thing. So even if it is played for laughs, I think we could have stood to wait a movie before that's actually a romance. Especially because we know that we'll see those characters on screen again. But you guys feel free to jump in and say more things.
Lauren, say something.
I will say that you guys are like really like not liking Hope, and I think it might just be because I'm such a massive fan of Lost. But like, I really liked her, but I'm like fiercely loyal to anybody that's been on that show, so I could be blinded by it.
See, I think some of the way she was handled in the script, I had some issues with. I mean, I like what we're given, and I actually share her frustrations with not seeing her as Wasp. I think they did a good job of making it not feel postponed, but it still kind of felt a little bit postponed. I really enjoyed the scene she has with Pym in the laboratory when they kind of have that scene out. That not the makeup scene yet, but that argument scene. I think was really good, and I think it goes back to this thought I keep having that the acting in this film is a little bit better than the script, and that's I think one of the scenes that kind of like strikes me on that. Yeah, everybody's like all in, and if the script was just a little bit more sophisticated, I think we'd have a really good kind of Iron Man level film. I mean, hey, I enjoyed it though. Despite my issues, I think I'd rather enjoy the film.
I think it's important to note that and it's all hush hush, and we don't know a lot, and I don't want to talk about the Edgar Wright thing, but there's a lot of talk that because he left, they had to really hurry what they had, and I think the story might have suffered a little bit from quick rewrites at the end. I think that's almost an inevitable thing that happens in a situation like that. So I mean, like it's probably like a lot of our character issues, probably just because it wasn't able to be fleshed out before it was supposed to open.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing that the movie ended up being as enjoyable as it was for me, given that.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, Ryan.
Yeah. I think Peyton Reed did a pretty good job with what he was given here. I mean, I thought the direction, especially in the action, was really good, especially since he's a guy that hasn't done a movie like this before.
What's the director's name?
Peyton
Reed.
What has he done? Or
he did some like Step It Up cheerleader movie before this.
Oh, yikes!
The other thing before that.
Yeah, I want to talk about Peyton Reed for a minute. This is a thing that that Vince and I talked about on a radio show last week, but that show actually, because of technical problems, didn't air. So that actually airs this coming Wednesday. But I read an old article that I found just randomly, haphazardly in some old stuff I had cut out from a magazine in 2002, and it was listing upcoming superhero movies, and one of them was Fantastic Four, directed by Peyton Reed. And I had never heard this, that he almost directed that movie.
Wow.
It's also really interesting where he came, especially because so I found that article, Ant-Man comes out this year, right before the FF reboot. Fascinating. But the other thing I think is really interesting is where he came from, because before he was directing movies, he did, believe it or not, one of the first things he ever did, he was responsible for directing all of the opening live-action sequences from the Back to the Future animated series. And he also directed all of the Weird Al show.
Yes.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I just want to bring that up because I happened to read up on him this week, and he's had a really interesting career, and finally doing a superhero movie. More than a decade after he almost did before. I think it's fascinating. Ren says that the forced romance happened because Kate left the island.
Well, she didn't have Jack anymore. What was she supposed to do? End up with fire?
William Parcell once again has a brilliant question, and I know I've read a lot of his stuff, but everybody's clamoring for me to mention this. Oh God, this is so smart! I can't wait for you guys talk about this. Cap, why do you think Hydra didn't kill Pym when he quit S.H.I.E.L.D. since they were working with S.H.I.E.L.D.? Didn't think of that.
That's a good question.
I mean, I just don't think it's clear what his relationship with S.H.I.E.L.D. was like. Was he working for S.H.I.E.L.D.? Was he working for Peggy and Howard Stark exclusively? Was he a sanctioned S.H.I.E.L.D. agent? We don't have any idea.
Great point.
Yeah. And maybe, I don't know, maybe they probably maybe considered it, but maybe, I don't know,
Well, you'd think they'd want that particle. They want it now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you think that they would kill him and go get it unless Dan's right and they didn't know about him because, I mean, no one in that room could have been a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. The whole thing.
Well, that dude that's
What's
trying
the other guy S.H.I.E.L.D. agent?
technology in the past.
Well, not a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, a Hydra agent. Sorry.
Hydra agent.
So wait, go ahead, Dan. Sorry.
Was that dude that wanted the technology in the movie part of Hydra?
I thought he was. Didn't he show up at the end of that movie with the other Hydra agents?
Was it the same guy? If it
Well,
was, then I don't know why he's waited this long. That makes no sense at all.
Well, hey, he also may have joined them like later on. I mean, he may have not been with them in '89.
Yeah, I just don't think there's enough there to know what the.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough. Frankly, I don't think there's enough information about the situation to really go down one way or the other on that.
Well, I would assume that he got his intel about the Cold War stuff that he was helping to prevent from S.H.I.E.L.D., but that wouldn't necessarily mean that he was an agent. Like, he could have kind of just been working rogue or pro bono or something. But yeah, I mean, Dan's right. We don't know anything, but I would be really surprised if we didn't in the future when we finally, because I feel like they're going to flesh his story out. I feel like that's likely to happen. And if it does, I'll be really surprised if he wasn't working pretty close to S.H.I.E.L.D. But we don't know.
This whole movie feels like it's the sequel to a movie that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and why do we want to see it later? Like, couldn't we have started with a Hank Pym movie? That's where I'm at right now. Especially because, a lot of folks are going to see this, and they're going to see, that don't know the comics, and they're going to see Hank Pym as the old, he's cool and interesting. He's the old washed-out guy, and the person we're supposed to be following, paying attention to is Scott Lang, especially because Scott's going to be the guy that we follow in future movies, and Hank Pym's the interesting guy. So, that sort of sucks that, like, people are going to grow up with Scott Lang Ant-Man kind of over Hank Pym Ant-Man unless they make a really, really killer, Michael Douglas Ant-Man movie. And he's gone on record to say he wants a solo Ant-Man movie that's a prequel that's all him. And
really? I love that.
I would so be on board for that.
Well, that's the whole reason that he said, "Could we please get my wife to play Janet?" Because he wants a whole movie that's just him and her.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Because I don't know if they'd be able to sustain it for a whole movie, but I thought whatever they did to make him look young worked pretty well in that scene.
He looked great. He looked like he used to look like in '89. I don't know. I'm guessing maybe they used a combination of makeup and that new CG.
I actually read about this, Manos. What it is it's the same technology that they used to make Captain America look skinny. And with him they had to use a body double, and they did CG on his face based on of what he looked like from photo references from '80s movies that he did.
Wow. Yeah, because it's like, oh man, this is like giving me flashbacks. It looks exactly like he did in '89.
And I thought the makeup for whatever they did for Peggy and Howard looks pretty good too. Whatever.
They did the same thing with Howard Stark, except since he was only like 10 years younger, they didn't have to use a body double. They just used him.
Right.
I love the fact that they used the older actor from Iron Man 2 instead of going and using the guy from.
I was blown away that they thought of that. I thought that was awesome because they could have. You're right. They could have caked up makeup on him, and I guess with Haley Atwell, we're just gonna have her play that part at every stage. Like if we ever see a 15-year-old version of her, they're gonna de-age her.
And I'm fine with that because Haley Atwell is the best thing ever. I love
she's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm glad they started out with them because those are the Peggy Carter. It's like okay, I'm getting into this. Here's Peggy Carter. I feel comfortable. Okay, yeah, all right, let's get going with this thing. It's nice seeing her at different stages in her career too, which is kind of cool. Oh man, what a career she's had. We've seen her in the Captain America movie, in her own series, hanging out with the Ant-Man guy. I mean, this is interesting.
King, I think Ant-Man, I don't know if this is our King or just someone else calling himself King. I think Ant-Man will die in Civil War as Giant Man taking the place of Goliath. That's interesting. I would be very surprised if they kill him off in the very next movie he's in.
Yeah, I don't think that's likely to happen.
Well, guys, we are 10 minutes past what I had initially planned, so let's go ahead and go around and have some final thoughts. I'm going to keep looking at some comments and see if there's anything else we want to make sure to tackle on right at the end. Lo's gotten to say next to nothing, and I'm sorry. She keeps dropping in and out and then coming into the middle of conversations, and basically she said, Lo's gotten to say, I liked it and lost. And that's about it. So, Lo, any other things you want to make sure and bring up? And if you'd like a soliloquy, you're welcome to one. Go right ahead.
A soliloquy? Oh, geez. No, I mean, I feel like I've said most of what I wanted to say about this movie. For the most part, it's or like you guys said it too, it's the plot kind of barrels on without any real context. And, I mean, if you just kind of don't pay attention to the plot, I feel like it's an enjoyable movie, but it's not the best Marvel movie for sure. I'd say it's near the bottom. But that being said, it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like, they've had so many good movies, they're kind of due for a mediocre one. But yeah, I mean, I liked it generally. I don't think I'll see it again in theaters, but that's what I'll have to say.
Okay, Steve, you also haven't said a whole lot. So if there's any more stuff that you want to make sure and bring up, because I know you've got a kind of a different opinion from us, and I feel like you haven't really got to be as negative as maybe you'd like to. You're welcome to that. So go ahead.
Well, I don't know. It's not a bad movie. It's just really, really, really generic and bland, and it loses me in multiple places. It's when it works brilliantly. I love the Falcon stuff. I love the action scenes. I love the acting. None of the character or plot stuff works for me at all. I would compare this to Iron Man 2 and Thor: The Dark World before anything else in the MCU. I will probably never watch this again, and it's mostly just because I just don't get any joy out of it, really. If I want to watch, the moment I watched it, the first time I saw it, I felt like I saw it 3 times already. If I want to see a fun, quirky superhero movie, I'll watch Guardians of the Galaxy. If I want to watch a movie about S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that's interesting, I'll watch Winter Soldier. If I want to watch a movie about a guy that's sarcastic and has fun, I'll watch Iron Man. I really don't need to see this again. And again, it's not bad. It's just there was nothing in it for me to latch onto whatsoever.
Yeah, what about your need to watch a movie that has lots of bugs in it, Steve? Where are you going to get that?
Lord of the Flies.
Ah.
Oh, I hate that book, man.
I do too, but still.
Steve, I got to ask you this then: do you think that there's a chance moving forward when we get the Civil War and some of the other Avengers movies that they'll make you like Scott Lang more than you did here, or do you think that you're likely to see that every time you see him on screen you're just reminded of a movie you didn't really like very much, and this guy, like, can we flesh him out, or is he already doomed because we didn't get?
I don't think he's already doomed. The best thing about the movie is that Scott Lang has no character aside from he loves his daughter and he's sarcastic. You can do infinite things and make him better. I don't think you can retroactively make this movie better as much as you can make everything else around it better, which is okay, I guess. I would love to see Scott Lang show up in Civil War and be what he is in the comics, which is essentially grown-up Spider-Man. I think that'd be a great idea to go moving forward. And you certainly have the foundation for it because there's not much here to begin with.
Back in my day, grown-up Spider-Man was Spider-Man.
Yes! And I think a grown-up, like, when he's married book with Spider-Man teamed up with Ant-Man would work swimmingly.
Oh,
that would be nice.
Dan, what are your final thoughts, sir?
I like Ant-Man. I don't think a whole lot of the character stuff makes all that much sense, but I think the performances and the humor are charming enough and interesting enough that I think it's worth seeing in the theater. I think it's worth your money. The action's fantastic. I mean, on a technical level, I think the film's pretty well made. The problem is the script, ultimately. That's, all the problems that we mentioned, they're all script problems. I don't think any of the people involved in the direction or the acting, anything like that, are really the problem. So if you want to, I put it this way, if you want to see a movie about likable people doing things that are less interesting than what they did before and are going to do after this movie, then go see it. It's enjoyable enough.
Yeah, that makes me. I'm sorry, Dan. I feel like people keep saying cool things, and I gotta ask questions. Dan, do you feel like they just that they told the wrong story? And
Yeah.
And if they did, is it because we're trying so hard to make a small-scale movie to reflect the smallness of our character, and a guy who is free of being like unimportant and that kind of thing, that we've accidentally kind of told almost a non-story? Is that what we did here?
I mean, I don't know what the scale is really the problem. I think I don't know. I think the story need to have started when Scott Lang was making the decision whether or not to steal the money that he steals, and have him grapple with that, and then that's why the impetus for why he becomes Ant-Man, and like I don't think we needed all of the stuff with him getting out necessarily and like palling around with Michael Pena for the story to work better. It was funny, but I didn't think that we needed that stuff for this in terms of how to make the story better. And the stuff with Hank Pym, if that's as integral to the plot of the movie, we needed to spend more time with that guy and understand him a little bit more. I don't know that there's a way to make this movie with the stuff that it has in it and have those two people be dual protagonists. I think maybe it bit off more than it could chew more than anything else. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, these are... You easily could have made a story, and I don't feel like I'm rewriting when I say it. You easily could have made a movie, you know, told a story about, and this would be the big thing that paralleled them, two guys who keep taking the easy way out and paying for it. You know, and have with Hank Pym it be something to do with the Ant-Man suit. But does Scott Lang need to? Do we need him to seem like maybe he's sort of a social crusader? Do we even need that? I mean, like, can't he just be a guy who is so good at you know, crime that he has a hard time not falling back on it instead of actually doing real work because it's just so easy for him, and then make that the thing that they have in common? Just like, why didn't? It's so cut and dry and simple. That's kind of what it should have been, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The fact that he's a social crusader is the one thing that makes me interested in him in the first place.
Oh, okay, not me. Just because it's so tacked on and kind of like. Because, again, I didn't even think of that until the third act. Like, oh, is that what he's supposed to... Okay.
I'm talking about potential interest. I'm not really interested in Scott Lang's character in the movie that much at all. But the one thing that makes me potentially interested in him is that he has a moral code and thoughts about something that were not told in the movie.
But I feel like he could be interesting if he was just a guy who was like trying to provide for his family and had this skill that's almost like he's so good at it, it's almost like a superpower, right? And he keeps putting it in the wrong place, and then he learns how to do something more constructive with it. I mean, like that's an interesting story to me.
Well, I think I might be able to answer that a little bit, because I think he's set up as somewhat of a social, what did you call him?
I said
a social crusader. To help give the audience that kind of vibe, because what we're asked in a superhero movie to get behind a guy who's a thief and a criminal, and it kind of helps it be more of accepting of this character as a hero if we see this likable guy who is doing something wrong for the right reasons, and then ending up paying for it. I mean, the only reason he goes back to crime is because he is messed up and to the point where he can't see his daughter, and he can't get a really good job so he can pay child support to see his daughter again. And he's at risk at getting in a position with his daughter that Hank Pym and Hope are at. I mean, his relationship with her hasn't been ruined yet, but it could be, and he feels like time is of the essence. Like, he needs to change things now, which is why he ends up taking the job that gets him involved in this crazy mess.
There's all that talk with Hank Pym about how you know, like as soon as you go out, you immediately go back to crime, and I just feel like it's kind of at odds with itself about whether or not about whether it's more that he's doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, or because he's being lazy because it's, or not lazy, but like it's too hard trying to do it through the system.
I think he's just frustrated with the system.
Yeah, that's how I read him. I viewed him as seeing the system as inherently set up against people, and that's why he's not interested in participating in it.
And see, I feel like that's just, there's a couple cursory mentions of that, but I don't like see it in his character.
Yeah, I don't either, but I think that's where they were trying to go with it. And
okay, I'm with you, but there's as much mention of he always goes back to crime as there is of he does it for that reason, and they needed to kind of pick one, I think.
Well, I think keep going back to crime because he gets disillusioned with it over and over and over again, like he did with the Baskin-Robbins job, where he gets out of jail and he's trying to make a living for himself, and they fire him because he made one mistake in his past.
That's
like
fair.
how do we expect people to come out of jail and be productive members of society if we don't give people who got out of jail jobs? It's counter to it. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, he tried over and over to get legit jobs, and in getting the job to Baskin-Robbins, which I love the fact that we're talking about this, Baskin-Robbins. To get the job at Baskin-Robbins, he apparently lied on his application, because anybody who's filled out an application is always seeing that little question, like, have you ever been convicted of a crime? He obviously skipped over that or said no, and then they eventually found out.
Clearly Baskin-Robbins is run by Hydra, right? Because they always find out. I'm just Dan, you're absolutely right. I think the fact that there's not enough talk about that kind of stuff is the reason that I keep forgetting about it. I just keep forgetting it's even in there.
Yeah, and I wish it was, because it's potentially interesting. But
and I think you're latching onto that more than I am, because your head is in that political world and you think about that stuff. And it should, if that's what it's supposed to be, it should have been brought more to the forefront.
I think that's what they were going for, because they call him a whistleblower, and we've had people like that, people recently like Edward Snowden identify themselves as whistleblowers in the same sort of way, exposing some sort of large, powerful entity for what it really is. And I don't know. I think there might have been an attempt to do that in whatever movie this was before the Edgar Wright thing, or when they did rewrites, or maybe he didn't have the script complete enough. I don't know what the case is, but I think that was what was attempted but not executed.
Yeah, see, the big thing I could decide if that wasn't just a justification for why he went after those people, because it's not like he took the money and gave it to people he thought he deserved it. He kept it.
I thought that he gave the money back to the people.
That was never mentioned. If it was, I missed it twice.
He was stealing the money back for the people because the company was ripping them off. But maybe
I think they did mention that.
Okay, I missed it twice then. Because you mentioned that when we were doing our review the other day, Dan. I was looking for it today and never saw it.
Oh, okay. I thought they mentioned that when they talk about a crime that he committed, but maybe I'm misremembering.
I feel like I'm remembering it too, Dan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't matter which one of us is right. Clearly, it wasn't. They didn't make a big enough deal out of it.
It wasn't obvious enough.
Yeah. So anyway, Manos hasn't really had his final thoughts. So go ahead, Manos.
Okay. I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I do recognize the fact that there are certain flaws in the movie where I would mostly attribute it to a script that is sometimes uneven and unfortunately stays a little too formulaic for its own good. But I think the characters, the action, special effects, and of course the acting primarily, I think do help rise this above the material. I think it's a fairly good film. Of course, it's not Iron Man, it's not Avengers good, but I mean, I enjoyed it. I'll probably see it again once or twice here and there. And if it's considered like, I'm thinking about the films it's being paired with, like, oh, this is probably along the lines of Incredible Hulk or Thor 2. You know what? I still like those films, and I think that speaks volumes about the Marvel Cinematic Universe series so far. That the lesser films are still pretty good, actually. They haven't had they haven't had a Batman and Robin. They haven't had like a devastatingly bad film in this series so far. So if this is as bad as it gets, then not bad, pretty good. Especially when we're 30, 40 films into this series.
Manos, if you were going to pick one Marvel character to do a movie with that much neon with, who would you pick?
Ooh, neon. Punisher.
Doctor Strange.
Oh, Doctor Strange! Yeah! Yeah, Joel Schumacher could have made a great Doctor Strange movie. Dan.
Yes, he could have.
Yeah, he would have been great for that. All right. Well, anything else that needs to be... We're a half an hour over, but this conversation got interesting, and I like nothing more than duking it out with Dan Torrey. So, is there anything else that needs to be brought up? Lo, Steve, Anybody?
Did we mention the post-credit thing with Bucky?
We haven't talked about that at all. No, go ahead, Steve.
Oh, okay. Because there's really no context to it. Captain America mentions the Accords, which might have something to do with Civil War's plotline, and Bucky shows up. So I was smiling ear to ear.
Yeah, and it seemed like a really tense situation to suddenly bring up Ant-Man in. You know what I mean? It's like, oh man, we've got him tied up in a warehouse, and we gotta do something. We're trying to interrogate him, and then Falcon. I know this dude named Ant-Man.
True story. The moment the movie was over, I came home and watched Winter Soldier again. So there's that.
Yeah, but remember, Steve flips through channels and sees snow and watches Winter Soldier. So,
why do I need to flip channels when I own Winter Soldier? I can just watch that 24/7.
Yes, Dan.
I was gonna say I liked the post-credit sequence a lot, just because seeing Bucky immediately being involved in the plot for Civil War is really exciting, because I didn't know if they were going to bring him in right away for the Civil War. Obviously, he takes over for Cap in that mantle, and he's heavily involved in this story in the comics. But I just wasn't sure if maybe they'd save him and he'd go wander off and do his own thing for a little while, and maybe come back for whatever Cap 4 ends up being or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad that he's going to be there. I hope that the Russo brothers are able to manage all these characters, because there's a whole lot of characters in this movie. Maybe even more than Ultron at this point, but we'll see.
Pretty much the entire MCU is in that film.
Oh boy. Well, hopefully they're able to pull it off.
That's going to be nuts. Yeah, Dan, considering the after credit scene from Winter Soldier, yes, I didn't say Civil War this time. From that movie and all that setup, it would have been really sad if we had to wait too much longer to see more Bucky, considering that we know what movies they're making out through 2020 at this point, and it would have had to have been the next wave, and we're like, okay, we're still waiting for Bucky to get, and then Winter Soldier, like Bucky Barnes, Winter Soldier, something would be the next thing they would do. I can see him eventually getting his own movie, especially if he ends up becoming Captain America, then he will. It'll be called Captain America something.
Yeah. I would love to see a Cold War setting Bucky Black Widow movie. That would be amazing.
Just adapt the Bitter March, that thing that we reviewed last year, where he's chasing down Nick Fury all the way through the Russian snowstorm. It would be a perfect film.
With Scarlett Johansson, Bucky, and Sam Jackson, I am there. That sounds amazing.
Speaking of, is it true that Nick Fury, of all the people that are going to be in that movie, that Nick Fury is not in Civil War? Because that seems wacky to me, especially considering how shoehorned in I kind of thought he was in Age of Ultron.
I don't think he's on the casting list. I don't think he's on it.
He's not in it, and that's weird in my brain.
I'm checking right now, actually. He's not in it.
I mean, I'm not saying you can't make it without him, but we probably shouldn't have kept throwing him in places where he didn't really need to be there if we weren't going to have him in that movie.
Well, hopefully the post-credit sequence of Civil War is Osborn taking over S.H.I.E.L.D., and we do a better Dark Reign in the movies, because Osborn being the center of the Marvel Universe is the best idea ever. Poorly executed in the comics, granted, but I love Norman Osborn.
And cast William Dafoe.
I love Dafoe as Osborn.
He can be alive again, and it's cool because it's a different universe.
Oh no, that's
going back to formula.
Well, everybody, thanks a lot for joining us. Hope you had a good time hanging out with me and Dan and Manos and Lo and Robot Lo and Steve Baxi. And we will see you again very soon. I read a few comments here and there. I didn't get a whole lot of. There was so much discussion about all kinds of things in here. I went into as many things as I could, and we ended up having a lot more to say than I thought we would. So anyway, thanks for joining us. Sure appreciate it. And once again, this was Dan Torrey.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
The Curious Lo.
Hi.
Beware the Steve Baxi.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
And the Real Manos.
And don't forget, I love you.
And I'm Captain Logan saying goodnight.